They called the black CEO servant. Seconds later, she answered in perfect Chinese and ended a $700M deal. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel is losing traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can help us. It's quick, free, and allows us to continue bringing you great content. Your support means everything. Let's keep this channel growing collectively. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to the story. Who let the servant sit here? The words dropped like glass-shattering marble. Every head turned except hers. Amara Lewis sat at the far end of the boardroom table, navy suit crisp, tablet open, pen steady. She didn't flinch, didn't speak. Only her eyes moved calm, deliberate, scanning the faces of men who had already decided she didn't belong. The laughter that followed wasn't loud. It was worse. It was confident. The man who'd spoken, Li Jian, senior investor of the Zhonghua Alliance, leaned back, whispering in Mandarin to his partner. The translator smirked. The phrase, Yutrin the Heron Nuren, slid through the air like smoke. Stupid black woman. They didn't bother lowering their voices. She heard every word. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below, and if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change. And we're glad you're here. Now, back to Amara. Her pen stopped moving. For a second, she thought of 2009, the first time she'd walked into a Beijing conference room as a junior consultant. Someone had mistaken her for catering staff. She'd smiled then, too, but that smile was gone now. This wasn't catering. This was a $700 million deal, and the room had just laughed itself out of it. Li Jian's assistant leaned over, whispering again in Chinese. She doesn't understand, just another face they send to look inclusive. Amara crossed one leg over the other. Her heel clicked against the floor once. The sound cut sharper than any reply. She could feel the pulse in her wrist slow, not quicken. That was always the tell calm before precision. A junior staffer at the back, a young woman from Singapore, noticed. Her gaze flicked from the mocking men to Amara's stillness, as if she could sense a storm tightening behind that silence. Across the table, another executive chuckled. "Let's wait for the real CEO before we begin," he said in English, loud enough to make sure she caught it. Amara looked up slowly. The light from the chandelier traced the edges of her face, not anger, not pain, just calculation. They had no idea the woman they'd mocked owned half the seats in that very room. And soon, they'd understand every word she was about to say in their own language. The room reset itself, or pretended to. Papers shuffled, cups clinked, but the air didn't move. It was heavy now, like everyone was pretending not to notice what had already cracked. Amara closed her tablet, slowly. The sound of the magnetic snap was small, but in silence, it felt loud. She leaned back, posture effortless, eyes calm, a look she had practiced for years, the one that said, "I'm still in control." At the far end, Li Jian was whispering again. "Why is she even here?" he muttered in Mandarin. American companies love their diversity pets. His partner laughed, quiet but cruel. Amara's fingers twitched once on the table, then steadied. She glanced toward the translator, a young man named Wei, who quickly looked away. Guilt flickered across his face. She smiled, barely. A test had begun. "Mr. Li," she said softly, voice warm enough to disarm. "How long have you been with Zhonghua Alliance?" He blinked, surprised that she spoke. 15 years, he said. "Impressive," she replied. "Longevity requires vision." He smirked, mistaking courtesy for weakness. Vision, and knowing when to lead and when to serve. Her eyes met his, steady as glass. "Exactly," she said. "That's what I came to evaluate today, who understands leadership." "Oh," the translator froze. The assistant from Singapore glanced up again. Something in Amara's tone had shifted, almost imperceptibly. It wasn't anger, it was strategy. She reached for her water glass, her reflection mirrored in the crystal rim. For a second, the room blurred, and memory took over. Shanghai, 2012. She was 25, standing outside a logistics firm. A man had refused her a translator's job because clients prefer lighter faces. She had gone home that night and decided to learn Mandarin herself. Every character, every tone, every word. And now here she was, fluent, successful, invisible by choice. Until now. Wei, the translator, cleared his throat. Would you like me to? She interrupted gently. No need. I understood. He went still. So did the men across the table. Then she smiled again, polite, poised, deliberate. Gentlemen, she said, before we proceed, I'd like to hear your proposal, in detail. The words landed soft, but her eyes said something else. I'm listening and I remember every word you said before this meeting started. Li Jian nodded, forcing a grin. Of course, he said, shifting in his seat, but the confidence was gone. Outside the window, the city lights began to flicker on. Inside, the real negotiation had already started, the one they didn't even know they were losing. The projector hummed. A pale glow spread across the polished table, washing every face in corporate light. Li Jian began his presentation confident, mechanical, rehearsed. Charts of profit margins and supply forecasts filled the screen. Numbers, percentages, projections. But Amara wasn't watching the slides. She was watching them. Each gesture, each whisper, each glance traded across the table. Under her sleeve, a small watch face glowed faintly. Its edge pulsed once recording, transcribing, time-stamping. Protocol 11, automatic language capture. A feature designed for cross-border meetings, rarely used, until now. Her assistant's voice echoed in her memory from that morning. Do you want me to sit in on the call, ma'am? No, she'd said. This is personal. Across from her, Wei the translator fumbled slightly. His eyes darted between the investors, then to Amara. He knew she understood everything. The realization was a weight pressing down on him. Li Jian kept talking, oblivious. Our partners expect efficiency, he said. We can't risk delays caused by cultural differences. Cultural differences. He said it like a flaw, like a warning label. Amara tilted her head, pen tapping once against the table. And how do you define that risk, Mr. Li? He smiled, unbothered. People who don't adapt, who don't understand hierarchy. Her pen stopped tapping. Hierarchy, she repeated quietly, almost tasting the word. The room shifted. The assistant from Singapore looked down at her notepad, but her knuckles tightened. Wei swallowed hard. Amara leaned forward slightly, her voice calm but sharper now. Interesting, because my company's hierarchy is quite clear. Li Jian chuckled. I'm sure it is. Yes, she said. And right now, you're sitting at the bottom of it. The words hung there weightless for half a second, then heavy enough to tilt the room. Wei looked like he'd seen a ghost. The assistant's pen froze mid-stroke. Amara didn't blink. Continue your presentation, she said. I'm taking notes. Li Jian's grin faltered. His partner shifted in his chair. Perhaps we start over, he said. Different tone. Amara smiled. No need. The tone is perfect. I like to know what people sound like when they think they're unrecorded. The watch at her wrist pulsed once more. Every syllable, every insult, stored in the cloud before they could even exhale regret. Silence crawled back into the room, uneasy now, not polite, but afraid. Outside, thunder rolled in the distance, low and deliberate, like applause coming early. Amara straightened her cuffs. Let's proceed, she said softly. I believe the real negotiation starts after the masks fall. And in that moment, no one dared breathe too loud, because they were no longer sure who was being tested and who was recording their fall. Li Jian's voice thinned. What had once sounded like dominance now trembled around the edges. The slides kept changing, but no one was listening anymore. The only sound that mattered was the faint, rhythmic tap of Amara's pen against the table, steady, patient, deliberate. He was sweating now. So was his partner, Chen. They avoided eye contact with her, staring instead at the screen like it might rescue them. We can move past earlier misunderstandings, Chen said finally, forcing a laugh. These things happen. Lost in translation, yes? Amara tilted her head. Translation? She repeated softly, as if tasting the word. Then, in flawless Mandarin, she answered, Translation only fails when there's nothing worth saying. The silence that followed was deep enough to hear the air conditioning hum. Even Wei, the translator, froze mid-breath. The assistant from Singapore pressed a hand over her mouth, half gasp, half awe. Li Jian blinked slowly, disbelief tightening around his face. You speak Mandarin? Amara's eyes didn't leave him. Apparently better than the men negotiating a $700 million contract. Wei lowered his headset. I think my job here is finished. Amara nodded once, a quiet mercy. You've been honest, she said. Li Jian leaned forward, desperate now. Miss Lewis, this is not personal. Business requires authority. Her voice was cool as steel. You mean appearance? You mistook mine for permission to insult me. Ugh. The assistant from Singapore finally spoke. Her voice trembled but carried truth. She understood everything, from the moment you walked in. Li Jian turned sharply toward her. Stay out of this! Amara's tone cut through him. She just did what real leadership looks like, spoke when silence became complicity. No one moved. Chen looked to his papers, searching for refuge in numbers that no longer mattered. Let's be reasonable, he muttered. Amara smiled, slow and disarming. Reasonable? She echoed. That's what I was being when I gave you the chance to respect me. She rose from her chair. The room seemed to shrink around her. The projector's light caught her silhouette calm, centered, immovable. Now, she said, switching back to English, let's discuss the cost of arrogance. You've just turned a partnership into a case study. Li Jian's voice cracked. You can't just... But she was already turning off the screen. Oh, I can, she said. And I will. Oh. For the first time, it wasn't her stillness that frightened them. It was what that stillness promised next. For a long moment, no one breathed. The glow from the projector faded, leaving only the sharp white light above a spotlight none of them had asked for. Amara stood still, her shadow cutting across the polished table like a verdict waiting to be spoken. The young assistant from Singapore, Mei Lin, looked down at her trembling hands. She hadn't planned to speak again, but silence now felt like a crime. She drew in a breath. Miss Lewis, she said softly, may I clarify something? Amara turned to her, voice even. Go ahead. Mei Lin straightened, her words gaining strength as she spoke. These gentlemen, she began, gesturing toward Li Jian and Chen, spoke of you as if you weren't in the room. They laughed, called you names, and told me not to translate. They said she won't understand anyway. But she did. Every word. Her voice cracked on that last line. Li Jian slammed his palm against the table. Enough. You are an assistant, not a judge. But Amara didn't flinch. Her gaze remained locked on Mei Lin. Thank you, she said quietly. The truth never needs rank to stand. Wei, the translator, exhaled sharply, like he'd been holding his breath since the meeting began. It's true, he murmured. They told me to skip sentences, to make it sound polite. Chen's voice rose, defensive, frantic. We were joking business banter. You Americans are too sensitive. Amara's lips curved, not in humor but precision. I'm not sensitive, Mr. Chen. I'm documented. Her wristwatch pulsed again, a soft green light barely visible under the cuff. Mei Lin noticed her eyes widened. You recorded it? She whispered. Amara nodded once. Everything. Words are currency, and today, yours lost all value. The room fell into uneasy stillness. The sound of rain began tapping against the tall windows, slow and deliberate, as if the city itself were listening. Li Jian forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Surely, Miss Lewis, we can move forward professionally. Amara turned toward him, voice colder now. Professionally ended 10 minutes ago. What we're doing now is accountability. Wei looked down, shame heavy in his posture. Mei Lin kept standing, a small silhouette of courage beside Amara's calm command. Amara gave her a slight nod, an acknowledgement, not of pity, but of partnership. You did what leaders do, she said. You chose truth when it wasn't safe. Mei Lin's eyes glistened. Someone had to, Amara replied. Yes, and history always remembers who did. Outside, lightning flickered against the skyline. Inside, the men who had mocked her finally realized this meeting was no longer theirs to control. The storm outside pressed against the glass, thunder low and steady like a heartbeat that belonged to the city itself. Inside, the temperature had shifted. Not cold, not warm, just tense. Every breath sounded too loud. Every blink felt like a mistake. Li Jian leaned forward, his composure finally slipping. You can't intimidate us with theatrics, he snapped. This partnership is already secured. You think one recording changes anything? Amara's expression didn't move. One recording can end everything, she said. Chen stood abruptly, his chair scraping the floor in protest. We flew halfway across the world for this meeting, he said. You should be grateful we even entertained your offer. That word grateful landed like a slap. Amara's gaze sharpened. Grateful? She repeated softly. For what? For the privilege of being insulted in 2 languages? Silence again, the kind that made people question the sound of their own hearts. Wei, the translator, tried to intervene. Gentlemen, please. Li Jian cut him off. Quiet. You don't speak unless told. Amara's voice followed, cool and precise. You just told the wrong man to be silent. She tapped her watch twice. A faint tone chimed, barely audible but decisive. Somewhere, in a cloud server 6,000 miles away, a digital log sealed itself every word, every timestamp, every tone of contempt. Protocol 9, verification lock. Her company's internal ethics AI had just gone live. On the far wall, a monitor blinked to life. Their own company logo appeared, followed by a message line. Internal compliance review activated. Chen's jaw tightened. What did you just do? Amara met his eyes. Something you should have done years ago, told the truth. Mei Lin stepped forward slightly, voice trembling. Miss Lewis, is this connected to corporate headquarters? Amara nodded. Every data point, every recording, routed directly to Nova Global's legal division. Li Jian's face pallid. You'll destroy our reputation. Amara took a measured breath. You already did. I'm just adding the footnotes. The assistant looked down at her notepad, where she had written a single word in shaky penmanship. Justice. Wei closed his laptop slowly. I'll submit my statement, he said. Amara glanced at him. Make it honest, Mr. Wei. Not heroic, just honest. Outside, the rain intensified, streaking the glass with silver lines. Inside, power had changed hands quietly, without shouting, without chaos. Amara adjusted her cuffs and looked at the men across the table. You thought this meeting was about numbers, she said, but it's always been about values, and today, yours are bankrupt. The thunder rolled again, not angry, but approving. Li Jian sank back into his chair, realizing too late. The woman they had dismissed as decoration was writing the final chapter of their careers. By the time Li Jian's phone began to vibrate, it was already too late. He looked down. A flood of notifications filled the screen. Internal alerts, flagged compliance emails, and one message from his own headquarters that froze his breath. Meeting under investigation. Do not leave the premises. The color drained from his face. Across the table, Amara sat perfectly still, fingers interlaced, calm as a still photograph. The storm outside had become a dull roar now, the rain streaking across the tall windows like camera flashes from an invisible press. Chen whispered harshly in Mandarin, Who leaked this? Amara didn't look up. Leaks happen when truth has nowhere left to breathe. Wei's laptop chimed. An internal bulletin appeared on screen, issued from Nova Global's main office. Confidential investigation. Zhonghua Alliance breach of conduct allegation. Below it, a timestamp, initiated 12 minutes ago. Mei Lin blinked rapidly, realizing the speed of it all. It's live, she murmured. Your system, it's already public. Amara nodded once. That's the thing about transparency, she said. It doesn't wait for permission. Li Jian stood, pacing now, panic breaking through the corporate mask. You can't do this. We've invested months, millions. Amara rose slowly, her movements quiet but commanding. And you've spent minutes destroying it. Actions compound faster than interest, Mr. Li. Chen pressed a hand to his temple. We'll fix this. We can call your board. You won't need to, Amara interrupted, voice low but absolute. They're already watching. The monitor flickered again. A new window opened live security footage from the room itself. Faces frozen, voices replayed, subtitles auto-translating in real time. Wei gasped. They're streaming it to corporate review. Amara's eyes didn't waver. Correction, she said. To every partner, investor, and shareholder in attendance remotely, transparency is our policy. Li Jian's knees nearly buckled. You'll ruin us. Amara turned slightly toward him, her tone almost gentle. No, I'll remind them who they're trusting with their money. Mei Lin stepped closer, her voice soft but resolute. They'll see everything. Amara nodded. That's the point. For a long, breathless moment, no one spoke. The rain softened, as if the sky itself had stopped to listen. Then her phone vibrated, one message from her executive assistant. Board confirmed. Proceed with termination protocol when ready. Amara exhaled once, quiet satisfaction behind the calm. The storm outside had begun to clear, light breaking faintly through the clouds. Inside, the real storm, the one of truth, was only beginning. She looked around the boardroom and said, almost to herself, funny how fast silence goes viral when it's recorded. The silence after exposure was deafening. The projector no longer showed slides or graphs, only the frozen frame of Li Jian mid-sentence, his mouth open, eyes wide, forever captured in humiliation. Chen's voice cracked first. "Miss Lewis, please, let's talk privately. This can be handled discreetly." Amara's gaze drifted toward him, steady, unblinking. "Discreetly? You mean quietly, so it disappears?" He opened his mouth, but no words came. Li Jian's tone softened into desperation. "We made a mistake, cultural misunderstanding. We can issue an apology public, if necessary." Amara folded her arms, the fabric of her suit whispering as she moved. "You already issued something public," she said. "It just wasn't an apology." He took a hesitant step closer. "You'll destroy the deal. $700 million gone. Do you realize the fallout?" She smiled faintly, the kind of smile that meant she'd already calculated the cost. "Money rebuilds, integrity doesn't." Wei, still seated near the end of the table, spoke softly. "They're messaging me," he said, eyes flicking to his phone. "Journalists. Someone leaked the live feed." Mei Lin looked up sharply. "The whole thing?" Wei nodded. "Every minute." Li Jian pressed his hands against the table, pleading now. "Miss Lewis, I can protect your interests. We can rewrite the narrative." Amara stepped closer, her heels echoing softly across the marble floor. "You don't rewrite narratives," she said. "You live with them." She stopped in front of the monitor. Her reflection merged with the paused footage of the men who had mocked her. "Do you know what I see when I look at this?" she asked quietly. Li Jian hesitated. "A misunderstanding?" Amara shook her head. "A mirror." For a brief second, no one spoke. The only sound was the faint hum of the air conditioning, the quiet rhythm of consequence settling in. Then she picked up her phone, thumb hovering over the screen. "Cancel the deal," she said clearly. "Effective immediately." The words carried no volume, but they landed like thunder. Mei Lin's breath caught. "You're ending it?" Amara turned toward her, voice gentle. "It ended the moment they forgot respect." Chen tried one last time, his voice small. "You can't walk away from that kind of money." Amara's eyes found his. "Watch me." She pressed send. Somewhere in Nova Global's system, contracts collapsed into digital ash. The room didn't move. Even the storm outside seemed to pause, holding its breath. Amara glanced once more at the screen, then at the faces before her. "This isn't revenge," she said quietly. "It's correction." And for the first time all night, the boardroom truly understood what power looked like. Calm, deliberate, and impossible to unsee. The room stayed frozen in that moment, $1 million of silence for every second that passed. The men who had owned the air minutes ago now sat in it like prisoners. Amara remained standing, calm, poised, centered under the ceiling light that now looked more like a spotlight. Her phone buzzed once. The corporate line connected automatically. "Miss Lewis," a voice came through, crisp, female, confident. "Legal division online. Do you want to address the board directly?" Amara's eyes never left the room. "Patch it through." The wall screen shifted from the frozen image of Li Jian to a gallery of live feeds executives from around the world, board members dialing in from London, Lagos, Shanghai, and New York. Dozens of faces appeared, watching the wreckage unfold. One man on the call spoke first, his voice heavy with curiosity. "Miss Lewis, we're seeing this in real time. Do you want to confirm your position for the record?" Amara nodded slowly, then turned to the two men across from her. "Yes," she said, "for the record." She stepped closer to the table. Her hand rested lightly on the polished surface, her reflection merging with theirs. "My name is Amara Lewis," she said, voice steady, deliberate. "Founder and Chief Executive Officer of Nova Global." The words landed like a verdict. Gasps echoed through the virtual board. Even Mei Lin, who had suspected, blinked as if hearing it out loud made it real. Li Jian's face went white. You're the CEO?" Amara's gaze didn't waver. "The servant you mocked owns the company you came to court." A collective murmur rippled through the boardroom. On screen, a few executives nodded slowly, some in shock, some in quiet respect. Amara continued, her tone surgical. "I built Nova Global from nothing. I've negotiated in 22 countries, in 7 languages. And every room taught me one thing: arrogance travels faster than wisdom. She looked directly at Li Jian and Chen. Today you didn't lose a deal. You exposed a pattern, and I'm ending it here. The corporate council's voice returned over the speaker. Confirmation received. Zhonghua Alliance is blacklisted pending formal review. Statement scheduled for release in 30 minutes. Li Jian stumbled backward, hand gripping the edge of the table. This will destroy us, he whispered. Amara's tone softened, almost compassionate. No, this will remind you that power has ears. She turned toward the screen, addressing the global board now. Gentlemen, ladies, Nova Global stands for accountability. Let this recording remain public, not as scandal, but as standard. Then she paused, the faintest trace of a smile appearing. And let it remind everyone, silence isn't weakness, it's evidence collecting its moment. For a long time, no one said a word. The storm outside had passed, but inside, the aftershock still hung heavy, a quiet kind of justice, written live. Li Jian's phone buzzed again, one vibration, then another, faster, relentless. He hesitated before looking. His face drained the instant he read the first message. Access suspended. All accounts frozen pending investigation. The second followed right after. Effective immediately, your credentials are revoked. Across the table, Chen's laptop screen dimmed, the company logo flashing once before fading to black. His cursor froze mid-motion. What's happening? He whispered. Amara didn't answer. She didn't have to. The monitor on the wall shifted once more, this time showing a live dashboard from Nova Global's internal compliance hub. 2 red alerts appeared under the heading Active Restrictions. Li Jian terminated. Chen Wei terminated. Wei, the translator, gasped audibly. Mei Lin covered her mouth with both hands. The 2 men stared at the screen as if it had physically struck them. Chen turned to Amara, his voice breaking. You can't just erase us. Amara's reply was calm, surgical. I didn't erase you. I documented you. The words sank deeper than any threat could. Li Jian's composure shattered completely. You think this makes you powerful? He shouted. You embarrass your partners. Humiliate us for what? To prove a point? Amara's voice didn't rise. Not to prove, to preserve. She took a step forward. Respect isn't a courtesy. It's currency. And you're bankrupt. Chen stumbled toward the door. It didn't open. A quiet click confirmed what he already feared: access restricted. Even the building had turned its back on them, Mei Lin whispered. They locked the system remotely. Amara nodded slightly. Protocol 11. Security lockdown after confirmed violation. Thunder rolled again, distant but deliberate, as if the sky itself was keeping rhythm. Wei looked at her, voice trembling. They're finished, aren't they? Amara exhaled slowly. They were finished the moment they believed power meant volume. The projector's light dimmed, leaving only her silhouette calm, commanding, unmistakable. On the screen behind her, the corporate feed displayed one final message in crisp white letters. Case closed. Statement pending public release. Li Jian collapsed back into his chair, eyes hollow. Chen sat beside him, head in his hands. Mei Lin stood silently near the window, watching rain streak down the glass. Amara gathered her documents, each motion precise, deliberate. This isn't vengeance, she said, her tone low but carrying. This is policy. And with that, she turned toward the door. Behind her, the men who once laughed at her silence now sat inside it, prisoners of their own arrogance, framed by the glow of justice written in code. No one moved as Amara reached the door. The room felt hollow, stripped of sound, stripped of certainty. The projector had gone dark, yet its faint afterglow still clung to the walls like the ghost of arrogance that refused to fade. She turned back once more, not out of hesitation, but conclusion. Her heels clicked softly on the marble, each step a punctuation mark in the silence. Before I leave, she said, her tone almost gentle, let's make sure the lesson lands where it should. Li Jian lifted his head, eyes glassy, voice hoarse. We were wrong. We were careless. Amara's gaze didn't soften. You were deliberate, she corrected. That's worse. She glanced toward Mei Lin and Wei. Truth costs courage, and you paid in full. Mei Lin's voice trembled. I just did what was right. Amara nodded. Exactly. And that's what separates leaders from followers, not the title, but the moment. She placed her documents neatly back on the table, as if reclaiming ownership of the space itself. "This boardroom," she said quietly, "will be remembered not for the deal that failed, but for the silence that finally spoke." Chen stood, unsteady. "You've made your point, Miss Lewis. What happens now?" Amara looked at him evenly. "Accountability, review, restructure. You'll have time to reflect, not much, but enough." Li Jian's voice cracked again. "Please, can we appeal?" Her response came like a whisper through steel. "You appeal to courts." This was character. On the wall screen, the board feed remained active. The executives watching remotely hadn't left. One of them spoke softly into his mic. "Miss Lewis, the board wishes to commend your conduct under pressure." Amara inclined her head slightly. "I don't need commendation, just correction." She took a slow breath, then turned toward the viewing camera. Her tone dropped into that deliberate calm that made every syllable land with weight. For anyone watching, dignity doesn't shout, it doesn't beg. It waits for truth to catch up. The boardroom was silent again, but it was a different kind of silence now. Not fear, not shame, but recognition. Mei Lin wiped at her eyes discreetly. Wei exhaled, like he'd been holding his breath for hours. Even the hum of the building seemed to fade in respect. Amara gave the two of them one last nod. "Archive everything," she said. "Let it stand as policy, not punishment." "Yes, ma'am," Wei whispered. She gathered her coat, sliding one arm into the sleeve, the movement slow and deliberate, like closing the final page of a long, heavy book. Then she looked once more at the men still seated in ruin. "You mistook silence for weakness," she said softly. "That was your last mistake." "Oh," no one answered. They couldn't. And as she walked out, the automatic doors parted, soundlessly opening not just to the corridor, but to the proof that justice can, indeed, be quiet. The doors closed behind her with a hush, sealing the chaos inside. The hallway stretched ahead long, glass-lined, washed in the gray light of a storm just passing. Her reflection followed her across the polished floor, calm, collected, untouchable. Amara didn't rush. Power never does. She walked as though time itself had decided to slow for her stride. Outside, the city pulsed beneath the rain, headlights cutting through mist like restless thoughts. The clouds were thinning now, revealing a faint glimmer of dawn. Justice had its own sunrise. Her phone buzzed once, a message from her assistant. "Press statement scheduled. Global coverage confirmed. Are you ready for interviews?" Amara typed back. "No need. The footage speaks louder." "Oh." As she reached the elevator, Mei Lin's voice called softly from behind. "Miss Lewis." Amara turned. The young woman jogged toward her, eyes still red but burning with quiet determination. "Thank you," Mei Lin said, breathless, "for standing up, for not letting them bury it." Amara smiled faintly. "You did more than stand up, Mei Lin. You stood with. Remember that." Wei appeared beside her, his translator badge now tucked into his pocket. "Will they recover?" he asked quietly. Amara pressed the elevator button. The doors slid open, gleaming gold. "Eventually," she said. "Failure teaches louder than I ever could." They both nodded, unsure what else to say. She stepped inside, turned to face them, and the softest smile crossed her lips. "Document everything," she said. "Then rest. Truth works while you sleep." The elevator doors began to close. The last thing they saw was her reflection, composed, unreadable, powerful. As she descended, the soft hum of the elevator blended with the fading thunder outside. The city lights rose to meet her through the glass. Somewhere above, the boardroom was still frozen in its quiet reckoning. When the doors opened again, she stepped into the lobby of Nova Global's Shanghai headquarters, her headquarters. Employees paused as she passed. They'd seen the live feed. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. Respect filled the silence she left behind. Her driver waited near the revolving doors, umbrella ready. She waved it off. The rain had slowed to a drizzle, the kind that refreshes rather than ruins. She stepped out bareheaded, letting the cool air wash over her. For a moment, she looked up at the sky at the faint sliver of light cutting through cloud. It wasn't triumph in her eyes, it was clarity, she whispered, barely audible. "I don't need to post proof. I am the proof." And as she walked toward her car, the camera of the unseen world, every phone, every mind that had watched, followed her with quiet reverence. Because that night, a woman the world once mistook for a servant had taught it something unforgettable. Power doesn't shout, It arrives.